Hello everybody, Liam Murphy here, aka the Blazing Bishop, back for another edition of Blazing Bishop Breakdowns. We're going to continue this series of looking at beginner games. Maybe I should even call this Blazing Bishop's Beginner Breakdowns. It's a lot of B's. Because I think, again, those games are very instructive for people to learn from. Today we're going to be looking at a game between two big streamers again. That would be Hafu Chess and XQC, played in one of the PogChamp editions on chess.com. Now, notice that there is quite a rating difference between these players. Hafu Chess has a chess.com rating of about 1280, and XQC has a chess.com rating of about 900. So about 1,300 to 900, about a 400-point difference. And if a rating is your actual ability, which it never is, a rating is an estimation of your ability, and it's really just a performance of, or a measurement of your past results, right? So it measures whether you won, you lost, you tie against the opponents. But if your rating is actually your ability, every 200 points is supposed to be very significant. So if you're rated 1,000, you're always supposed to be an 800. Or if you're rated 1,200, you're always supposed to beat an 1,000. So there's about a 400-point difference between these players. So Hafu Chess should beat XQC almost always. But let's look at the game because, again, a rating is just an estimation, so it will never work that way. So Hafu Chess opens up with E4, and XQC plays E5. Hafu Chess gets her knight into the game with knight F3, and XQC plays knight C6, a great move, defending the E5 pawn that was being attacked. And Hafu plays bishop C4, and XQC plays knight F6. Now, when I was a teacher, I would always tell my students to play the move bishop C5 against bishop C4. Because knight f6 welcomes the fried liver, which if you don't know how to play against the fried liver, which Hafu chooses to play here, can be very tricky. Now let's look at this. Both her bishop and her knight are attacking f7, the king's weak point, the f-pawn. And the f-pawn is weak because only the king is defending it, and the king is a terrible defender in chess. And so, if black just makes a random move like pawn a6, then the knight can take on f7 and fork the queen and the rook, winning material. Here, black would save its queen, and then you would take the knight on h8. What XQC plays against this is d5, and that is the best move. This interferes with the bishop from scene f7, so now if the knight takes on f7, well, the king can take back, and the bishop is no longer protecting the knight. Hafu captures on d5, which is the correct move. And the best move for black to play here, and if you don't know this opening, you might not just play this move, is knight a5. Knight a5 is the best move. It attacks the bishop, and it's really trying to get the bishop off of this diagonal so that the piece cannot coordinate on f7 together. What XQC played was knight takes d5, and knight takes d5 is not considered the best move, although it makes sense. I remember when I was a kid, I played knight takes d5 when I was faced with this until I just stopped playing knight f6 early. And it's because white can do things like even take on f7 with their knight. So they can sacrifice their knight, and the king takes back to prevent the fork. And then white could play moves like queen f3, hitting the knight once, twice, and the king. And then the king needs to do things like king e6, to defend the d5 knight, and then white can put more pressure on the pin piece with moves like knight c3. And so it gets really hard to play for black if you've never seen this opening. So going back, here I would advise XQC just play bishop c5 instead. If bishop c5 is played, obviously you can't play knight g5 because the queen would just take the knight. And so in the game, though, we got d5, pawn takes, knight takes d5, and queen f3. So a similar idea, but she did not sacrifice the knight on f7, attacking the knight 2 times. And XQC plays bishop e6. If I was white, I would have captured this bishop, just getting rid of the bishop, giving black double isolated pawns, a target for later. But she captures the knight on d5, which is not a great move. Please note here that after bishop e6, black could have, instead of playing bishop e6, white's knight is hanging. So black could have captured the knight on g5. However, this isn't a free piece because when you capture the knight on g5, you would stop defending your knight on d5. And so white would just pick back up the material with moves like bishop takes d5. So black could have done that, but they don't win material. So they went with bishop e6, bishop captures d5, queen captures g5, which is a blunder. And I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds here to see if you can figure out why. Well, this was a blunder because white can do bishop takes c6. You must know your checks. Remember, they just took a piece, right? And then they took another piece with check. Now, you do not want to take this bishop because if you do, well, the queen will capture on c6, forking the king and the rook. Picking the king will move, or bishop d7 will be played, and then you will take the rook on a8. And so what actually happened in the game was bishop takes knight and bishop d7, and then hafu just captured on d7 with check. The king captured back. And if we look at the material, white is just up a minor piece. So they're up 3 points and winning this game. Instead, what XQC could have done here is after a bishop takes knight, they could have just captured the bishop back. And that really should have been the first move that black was thinking about. Like, they just took your piece. Can we capture back? Don't get too fancy here and just take this knight. Maybe XQC was worried that these pieces were coordinating on f7, but black could have done things like bishop takes d5, hitting the queen here. And obviously you can't take on f7 because bishops move backwards, things that beginners sometimes forget. And white needs to defend the g5 knight from the queen, so they could have done something like maybe queen g3, and then black has all these ideas with trying to play knight d4 here, and trying to hit this c-pawn. And like if you play knight d4, or you could like play bishop e7 and h6 and give this knight a kick, trying to say that you wasted some tempo. But even just like knight d4 right away, and then even queen takes e5, what black can do is they can just play queen e7, try to trade off the queens, and they have a nice developed game with still pressure here on the c2 pawn. So black, of course, did not do that. Instead, they blundered by queen takes g5, not knowing their captures and their checks. You must always know checks, captures, threats, really in that order. So not missing a check, that is a sin in chess. Bishop takes knight, bishop blocks, and then she just captured for check. And again here, black cannot castle, but more importantly, they are down a minor piece 2-1. And so white castles. Rook e8, trying to castle the hard way for black, and d4. I like this move from hafu, a very strong move. It is both trying to open the position and a discovered attack on the queen, gaining tempo. So the queen must move, and she played queen d5 check, which is a strong move. Perhaps even just capture on e5 and trying to allow the rook to see the king would have been good. But queen d5 check. Not really sure what this check captures actually. Maybe not the strongest move. Maybe even taking the pawn would have been better. But king c8, getting the king off the open d file and only now capturing the pawn. And then c6 by XQC, hitting the queen. Queen d4. Hafu would love to trade queens because when you're winning, you want to trade material, even if it comes at a cost of a pawn. And so XQC does not want to trade queens, of course. So taking the e5 pawn, not something that black probably wants to do right now. So they play c5. Not the best move here, just attacking the queen, giving it kicks. Really, they should be trying to complete the development of their pieces. Notice that white is not the most developed either. And hafu plays queen g4, gaining a tempo. I like this. So the check gains her a tempo to then get development, hopefully. And king b8. And she plays queen g3, moving the queen again, defending the pawn, again looking to trade if black takes. However, maybe something like knight c3 would have been better. And then if you take the pawn, well, you could play moves like bishop f4, pinning the queen to the king. But queen g3 is played, queen takes e5, and then the tactic we just talked about, bishop f4, developing the piece with a better arrow there, and putting the queen into a devastating pin, and a absolute pin where the queen absolutely cannot move, or the king will be in check. And this game just went from bad to worse from here for XQC. So bishop d6 is played. Of course, Hafu trades a 3-point piece to the bishop for the queen. The bishop captures back. She gets her queen out of danger. XQC attacks b2, which is a good move. So a better move for Hafu would have been something like queen b3 to defend the b2 pawn. But the capture on b2, she just develops her knight. So if the bishop takes the rook, at least you get some material back. And that is what happened. So if we take a pause here and look at the material, 5 to 5, -2 from here, but +9. So white is up +7 from just the pieces. And then looking at the pawns, white is down a pawn, 5 to 6. So white is down, or white is up 6 points in material. Always good to know the material difference in a game. And here XQC plays rook e7, which is a good idea, looking to double the rooks. However, again, white's going to need to blunder this game away, like giving away a checkmate, like a back rank mate, which he may be trying to go for here. In order for him to win, he's just giving up way too much material. And so queen f4 is played, checking the king again, chasing it into the corner. H3 is played to stop any problems ever of a back rank mate. A very veteran move here. When you're up a lot of material like Hafu is, just make sure you don't get checkmated, guys, right? Make a move, invest a move, make sure you don't lose the game. Convert those wins. Rook e8 is played. Knight f3, improving the knight, getting it from a second rank knight to a third rank knight. H6 is played. Not a whole lot to say. XQC doesn't have a lot of great moves to play. Hafu dances her queen around a little bit. And then king f1. I really like this move, king f1. It's played to support e1. So Hafu's plan is she wants to play rook e1 and trade off material. Trading is good when you're winning. The knight supports e1, so she needs one more supporter of the square e1 because black attacks it twice. And so she wants to play rook e1 and get a trade. XQC plays g5, not stopping her plan, and she plays rook e1. So either you're going to take, and then we're going to take back, or you can move one of your rooks, like rook, I don't know, rook e6, and then we're going to take the rook. You can't leave the e-file because then we will take the rook on e8 with check. So black trades, the knight captures back, and here XQC, or Hafu, just starts being Pac-Man with the queen, taking all of the free stuff, even forking the king and rook here. The king can defend, and she first notice that white can totally just sacrifice this queen for the rook, giving up material if they want, just because they're up substantial material here. That would still be winning, but she's going to be Pac-Man, gobble up some more material, and starts pushing her past pawn. That is a great idea. This pawn on the far side of the board. She wants to push this down the board and try to get another queen. And she pushes the pawn down. And now she calculates that if she takes the rook, the king is outside the square of the pawn. And so this pawn is going to be able to promote safely without the king catching up. We can count the 1, king goes here, 2, king goes here, and promote. So this is the square of the pawn, guys. The king is not inside it, so the pawn will promote. And so a6. And not a whole lot left in this game. Hafu promotes to her queen. And here I would probably play a move like myself, like queen d5, preventing the king ever from getting to our c-pawn here. So I'd play like queen d5 and then just march this pawn down the board, get a second queen or a rook, and then I can do a king or a 2 rook mate or queen 2 queen mate. But she does a check here, gets her knight in the game, and finally she starts pushing down this other c-pawn. That's why I would have played queen d5 earlier, just to prevent the king from getting in the way here. But she wants to gobble up all the material, it seems. A bit unnecessary, but beginners sometimes do this. Now she's finally getting her second queen, and she's going to checkmate here with a kind of like a rook roller mate or monkey bar mate, but with the queens. And she needs to get the king out of the way so that this queen can do checkmate. So the king moves, and checkmate is delivered for hafu, taking down XQC. So an excellent game played by hafu here. And XQC put up a good fight. The things I would say is, my takeaways from this game is XQC has to know their checks, captures, and threats. I know everyone out there watching has lost a game because they didn't know a check, a capture, or a threat, and it is annoying. So make sure you're doing your tactics there. And then really just in the opening, if you don't know the fried liver, you should not invite it by playing knight f6. You should instead play bishop c5, and then the game could continue maybe like knight c3. And now if knight f6 is played, well, knight g5 is no longer a threat here because black can just castle their king. And giving up the two minor pieces for a rook and pawn, that would be great for black if we look at this real quick, because black has a ton of material developed, and the minor pieces are going to be able to control more squares on the board. And white invested a bunch of turns moving these pieces, and then they got rid of them for pieces that haven't moved. So they have very little development compared to black. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this game. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if so, and have a great rest of your day.